Hello everyone, how are you? The workshop will be on Broad River U-Haul planning area, proposed overlay district and zoning, and the resolution R-2025-29, which we'll be voting on in the regular meeting. Mr. Administrator, Andy Fuller.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you for members of council, thank you for making the time available to us. I think we have a joint presentation by Ms. Wagner and Mr. Tedder today to walk you through the history of this issue, where we find ourselves, and so that you have plenty of time to ask any questions that you have as you deliberate how you may want to move forward with this in the future.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Ms. Grabowski, who's been our consultant for this for more than a year now, is unable to be here, so I'm going to step in for her and try and give you, at the beginning, and the people that are watching, an overview of where we started and where we're now at. Back in the spring of 2022, the county received a request to rezone an area of Chelsea South, lying between Snake Road and 170, a few hundred acres there, as well as looking at about 3,000 acres on up across Snake Road on the Broad River side. In reviewing the proposals, we had initial concerns because of traffic, sewer, environmental issues in that sensitive area, and discovering that there really wasn't a lot of sewer capacity in that area with the water authority. Also pending at that time in front of the town of Bruceton was Ticket Hall, which is involved in more than 1,000 acres of land and proposed 4,000 homes. There was a significant amount of concern being expressed by the Jasper County constituency at that time, and we were talking with the Water Authority trying to figure out sewer issues, water issues, those things, and they were dealing with, and still dealing with, a backlog of maintenance and requests that they have. I was speaking with one of the board members, and they've got hundreds of millions of dollars of deferred maintenance and upgrades they have to do right now. So we have an infrastructure problem there. Also, we have two-lane roads, 462 and Snake Road, really being the only arteries in that area. So due to these concerns, back at that time, the County Council created the Broad River Task Force. We had more than a dozen stakeholders and groups, organizations, and interested parties get together, and they studied the issue, had workshops, and issued a report to council in May of 2023, in which their ultimate conclusion was given, and they had a request to create what's known as what they call the U-Haul Cultural Heritage District back then. And they wanted the comp plan to be looked at, and they asked the council to consider a moratorium and getting this done so that we could preserve that area. Commensurate at that time, we also had significant conservation efforts going on. We enacted a moratorium, all right? Concerns were included in the moratorium about the impact these new subdivisions, commercial and residential developments could have on the road infrastructure, evacuation routes, streetscapes, traffic congestion, stormwater, open space, natural habitats, and the quality of life in this area. Because remember, Jasper County wants to stay rural where it can and move development nearer to the municipalities where there's infrastructure available. We also had coming forward the efforts of conservation in the northern area of Broad River on our side. Slater track, those things were moving forward. There were some opportunities. The initial moratorium was for 9 months. We extended it in the spring of 2024 because there was more stuff going on that we wanted to take into account. Jasper County hired Denise Grabowski and her company, Symbio City, to assist us with that, and created study groups to move to that. In July of 2024, after multiple work sessions, stakeholder meetings, and input discussions with council members at the time, trying to get that. We passed on first reading the ordinance and then continue to have workshops and refinements. The main thrust of the overlay, which is to take a look at this particular area, which is the U-Haul Broad River District, and look at what do we need to do to address and recognize that we have sewer deficiencies, we have an environmentally sensitive area, we have a challenged traffic system in that particular area, but we didn't want to stop development. We wanted to channel development into smaller commercial areas where crossroads perhaps could be used to reduce the traffic impacts of only having 2 lanes to turn off of 462. Staff went out and we consulted with other jurisdictions looking for ways that they had implemented processes to protect their rural lands and sensitive areas. We had consultation with planners in Charleston, Berkeley County, Dorchester County, Spartanburg, Greenville, Beaufort, and others, trying to look at what they had to do. I believe Mr. Chairman participated in one meeting with Charleston planners who have severe pressures on the northern part of their county in the rural areas and trying to address lack of sewer and septic issues up there. One of the questions is about what's a good density to look at. Our review of various jurisdictions range from 1 unit to 25 acres in parts of Charleston to 1 to 3 in Beaufort, which they've used in other areas. It kind of led to let's looking at things and what do we have. That led to the creation of what we call the RP10 part of the U-Haul district, 1 unit per 10 acres. We also were looking at septic systems because we knew that sewer was not going to be available for some time there. We consulted with the Department of Environmental Services, other counties that had been addressing the septic issues. Charleston's had severe issues. In fact, I think I provided the council a lot of anecdotal articles and treatises about failing septic tank systems, where advanced technology systems are being used instead of conventional systems. Those other systems require a lot of maintenance, ongoing treatment, and monitoring. Most of these systems have practical issues because counties are the ones that end up, and municipalities are the ones that end up leasing it. And no one has the staff to do that or the expertise, in fact, how to implement it. Mount Pleasant recently implemented a monitoring program that you can voluntarily participate in, pay some money extra on your water bill, and have a fund if you need a pump out of your conventional system or some other repair. The problem with that is they have a municipal water system, so they have a place to bill them, and they're also large enough that they can do it, but they still, it's a prototype program. We'll have to see how it works out. It's kind of like a beta system. Going on this time, we had County Council also looking at the conservation efforts that were going on with thousands of acres being saved along the Broad River, and in the summer of 2024 authorized a referendum that included a significant allocation of money to preservation of land and avoiding conservation. It was over approximately $470 million, with 20% going to conservation efforts. It was passed in November. We're just now in the early stages of putting together the program to leverage our money along with Beaufort County and the state agencies and the private agencies to see what we can do there. During this time, we still kept getting public comments. We kept getting issues being brought to us by council members. We have constantly tried to modify the ordinance, the original ordinance, to address these concerns. Lisa can discuss these a little bit more in depth, but I want everyone to be aware that the first thing that we did to address these issues, and especially the impacts on smaller landowners, first of all, we excluded all parcels 10 acres or less. They're not going to be affected by the rezoning. We added in rural small lot subdivisions where the lot sizes could be down to 1 acre. We preserved the family property exceptions that we had, allowing the ability to have housing opportunities on the typical family estate properties. We kept that in place. We added in some more provisions to allow them to be able to address their needs for housing on traditional family lands. We included and did not, or we kept the provisions for minor subdivisions and the exempt subdivisions in this area. We made exceptions to some of the commercial development restrictions to accommodate those that have been in the pipeline coming forward. And we worked out arrangements with them that they seem to be accepting of. In fact, they filed and are moving forward under the the proposed regulations. Properties along I-95 and the northern part of the county, up Coosawhatchee area, determined that they were probably not best suited for this particular overlay. We removed those. We removed properties along the Highway 170 corridor, which we did that consultations with Beaufort County, which owns the other side of the road for the most part. We looked at properties near Richland in the transitional zoning areas that we already had and determined that they probably are better excluded at this particular point in time. We also looked at the septic tank regulations that we proposed and made modifications to those to ease some of the burdens, reducing the setbacks from some critical lines, some ditches, wetlands, non-saltwater wetlands, those types of things. So we're still trying to protect from seepage and spills into the watershed up there, which is the problem that the May River folks over in Bluffton are having to deal with in other areas, because when septic tanks fail, and they eventually will fail, we need to be cognizant that distance is a factor in reducing the impacts on the environment. Finally, a few important things to keep in mind. We've recommended for some time now that should the council enact this overlay district, that it be revisited within a relatively short period of time, perhaps 18 months, given the development cycle, or earlier, to see if we're having unintended consequences that need to be dealt with. Secondly, Jasper County has a PDD ordinance. If you have a very good project that you want to bring forward and you can address the PDD standards and the development agreement, traffic infrastructure, the environmental problems that you might be putting into the area, bring it forward. You can always ask for a rezoning. So it's not forestalling and completely saying no, never in this area. But our suggestion is to have to be an acceptable PDD, Spring Island, something like that, where it's at the forefront. The infrastructure for traffic is problematic always. The state is not going to bail us out. I mean, we need to look at Origin Boulevard, 170 and 278, to see that when we went to them and asked them to help us out, we're on our own, and that's where a significant portion of our 1% sales tax is going, is to fix those problems up there. So when we look at 462 Snake Road, we have to be cognizant that any development there is going to have to mitigate what's going on, because I don't know, I know in my lifetime, 462 will not go to 4 lanes. We'll have to figure that out. It also gives us an opportunity to see how the 1% portion of the sales tax going to conservation efforts can be leveraged in that particular area and mitigate the effects that the downzoning of some of the larger properties will have, so that we can accomplish two things: protect the environment and protect that property and the rural nature of Jasper County for at least another generation, if we're lucky. That's where we are right now. We have taken all these modifications and put them into a new ordinance, revised ordinance for the council to consider for second reading at our next meeting, if you so fit, or whatever you want to. And
just for clarity, when you said we're removing those properties from,
they're just unapplicable.
they're not going to be rezoned, but they'll still be within the overlay district.
Right.
So just for clarity,
It's a technicality, but the impact on a 10 acre or less is minimal when it comes to it. So with that, I'll answer any questions, but Lisa, I wanted to turn it over here so she can get down into more technical questions of what we have done minus the 20,000-foot overview of what we've tried to accomplish, given the directions that we've had for the last 2.5 years that we've been working on this.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I know we're under time constraints tonight, so I'll kind of follow your lead, but I passed out to you the printed version of the proposed zoning changes, along with a letter from Symbiosity. This was back in November, but nothing's really changed. Since that workshop, we've updated the ordinance and updated these, but this cover page just gives you an overview of the changes, the zoning map updates, like Mr. Tedder said, we're proposing not to rezone any properties in the village commercial areas in Coos. We're not planning to take them to village commercial in Coosahatchee along Highway 17, and also in Okatee along Highway 170. So those will remain the same as they are. Some are residential, some are community commercial, some are split zone. There's a lot of the split zoning designations down in Okatee. So no matter what, they'll need to come in for rezoning if they choose to develop. One other thing to point out, if you're just using your property for residential, a lot of this, you'd be exempt for single family residence from most everything that's being proposed. But in Article 5, we didn't make any changes. Article 6 in the use regulations, we added in, we changed golf courses and marinas based on previous comments to not be permitted in the RP10 zoning district. But we allow other schools and daycare services as conditional uses. So that was added into the use chart. In Article 7, we previously had the U-Haul Overlay District design standards in there. That's been moved to Article 8. The only thing we've changed in Article 7 is the maximum building size for village commercial, and added in the exemption for existing lots of record where a zoning certificate letter was issued and a pre-application conference held prior to the establishment of the moratorium. And so just real quickly in Article 7, what we are proposing is non-residential buildings in village commercial district be limited to 25,000 square feet. That part hasn't changed. That was in there previously.
25,000 or
2,500, sorry. 2,500, and that's just for your heated floor area. Oh, here's where we added the restriction that this restriction not apply to existing lots of record as of May 2023, where a zoning certificate letter was issued and a pre-application conference was held with the DSR prior to May 15, 2023. Article 8 is where the majority of the changes are, although a lot of these were in here previously as well. We shortened this from the U-Haul Heritage Cultural Overlay District to just be the U-Haul Overlay District. And we changed on page 2 of 8 of the Article 8, the design guidelines. At the bottom of that chart, we say the drain field setback may be reduced to 75 feet if the applicant can demonstrate the seasonal high water table is more than 15 inches below the trench bottom. That used to be 18 inches. So we have reduced that. We added in some field restrictions. This is only applicable to properties within the flood zone. And this is basically a mirror of how Beaufort County handles fill in their flood zone. Not to mention, we have a flood damage prevention ordinance that already regulates, or there is a requirement by FEMA to limit the amount of fill that you put in a flood zone without going through certain specifications that you have to meet and have certified by an engineer. And then the last part of Article 8, we've added in a paragraph there about allowing staff to make administrative adjustments for non-conforming lots, because we know there may be some that maybe they can't meet the ordinance entirely. Their lot already existed of record and for whatever reason. So this would allow them to come in, present their case, to be able to demonstrate why they can't meet it, and allow staff to be able to give a 20% administrative adjustment so that they don't have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we wanted to recognize that, try to be able to help anybody who might be challenged with something like that. Again, I point out what Mr. Tedder said, that we do recommend reviewing this, and the county council, at any time that you're aware of something not working, you can always ask the staff to go back and look at those issues and see how we can address those things. We also did reduce those setbacks, which Mr. Tedder mentioned as well, as far as the septic tanks being set back from wetlands. So previously we had proposed, well, at one point we had 2,000 feet. We reduced that to 1,000, but now like an advanced water system, we're only proposing 1,000 feet from critical areas, coastal waters, tidelands, marshes, beaches, and dunes. But if it's a jurisdictional wetland, that setback will only be 400 feet. Any type of just wetland like that. And then for a conventional system, the setback is reduced from, we previously had 200 feet, we've reduced it to 125 feet in critical areas, and 100 feet for just any type of wetland. Article 11 was very minimal, the changes we made there. We've just added in some conditions for horses and equine, and also gas stations. We put in the second single-family residential dwelling unit, just some language there that basically just states, for a second single-family dwelling residential unit in any zoning district, if you're going to have a second one, you just have to have twice the minimum lot size required. For instance, residential requires a half acre, you would need a whole acre. In rural preservation, where it's 1 acre, you would need 2 acres if you're going to have that second unit. And in family estates, we updated our chart there to allow, we already had family estates, so we wanted to make sure that that could be used in village commercial and RP10 zoning district. In the RP10 zoning district, you could have 1 unit per 1 acre instead of using the 10 acres under the family estates. This is only for family land. It had to be in your family for at least 30 years, and there is a cap of 25 acres. But in the rural preservation zoning district, there's already a cap to 12 units. So that's what we did in Article 11. And then in Article 22, this we previously called the Conservation Rural Subdivision. We've changed the name. That's Rural Small Lot Subdivision Standards. This is only applicable to properties in the RP10 zoning district. It is for families. You've had to own this for at least the property had to belong to you or your family member for at least 30 years. And this would allow you to create the small lot subdivision under the open space, where you have to put up a certain amount of 50% of the base site area. But you would be able to create 1 acre lots using this. Your density would be based on 1 per 10 acres, just to get to the density. Just for example, if you had 500 acres and you subtract out what's not usable, and then if you put up 50% of what is usable, and say that just gets you down to 250 acres, you would be able to do 25 1 acre lots. If you wanted to do 25 2 acre lots or 3 acre lots, you could do that as well. But your density is going to be based on that 1 per 10. But you could do something as small as 1 acre lot. If you have any questions, or you want to talk about anything more specific, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Mr.
A
Barzillo?
couple of questions. So this that you just handed to us, now I know this has floated around a while, but are there changes in here versus what any of us might have seen before?
This has actually been on our website since our workshop in November. So I think it has been passed around. What was passed around at the September public hearing out at Port Royal Sound, there were some changes made since then. Not anything that's new is highlighted in yellow. That's the same way on the website.
Anything yellow?
That's new. That's the
new.
field restriction, and it's been like that on the website since November for the general public. So.
Okay. All right. So a lot of concern over this is going to be something called property rights. And to me, property rights means if I own a piece of property, I have some sort of right, albeit restricted, of course. And I think everybody's property is restricted now. How will this affect someone who owns a piece of property, who has been told, I think your words were, if you took out the easements and any wetlands, you could increase your density from RP10, not from what you have now, but after RP10, if you gave 50% of that property and put it to conservation, you would be able to go from 1 house to 2. Is that a fair?
Well, you just kind of described the Article 22, the rules small lot, where that's how you get to your base site.
So you would have to give up half of your upland after everything, easements and everything. And if you did that, because you really couldn't force them to do that, but if they so chose to put half of it into conservation, what you had left over, then you would allow them to put 1 more unit on that.
That's incorrect.
Okay.
They would be allowed to create a subdivision based on how much their base site is. Like I just said, if you had 500 acres, you would minus out your land that is separated by a road or a utility way. You would minus your land that's within existing roads or ultimate right-of-ways, land separated by water or marsh, natural bodies. It's land you can't use, basically. So you minus that out. Let's just say that comes to 100 acres. So now you have 400 acres left. You would then put up 50% of what you have left. So that's 200 acres gone. Now you have 200 acres. Your density would be based on 1 per 10. So you could get 20 lots. Your lots don't have to be 10 acres. They could be 1 acre.
If you gave the 50%.
If you put up 50%
Now, if you didn't
into
put up
conservation.
50% of it, you want to keep your property, and it's used as you could today for this, you wouldn't be able to.
Well, that's not quite right either, because it depends on what type of conservation. There's a lot of conservation that depends on how are you using it. Are you growing trees? Are you maybe just hunting on it?
But you can do both of those now.
Right, and under a conservation easement, you probably still could do that.
You
You just
hunt
can't
it
develop it.
and fish it, but you would, would it be a fair statement that under this, property rights for the individual that owns the property, he will have less rights to use that property?
I would disagree with that, because if a big property owner comes in today and they want to do an integrated development, they have to come in with a PDD, 25 acres and greater. It's already written in our zoning ordinance.
But if
And
I
they
have,
could do
if I
that
have 10
instead
acres
of
of
using
land,
this.
if I have 10 acres of land and I have one unit on it, and I say I don't want to put what I have left in my uplands into conservation, but I'd like to put 2 units on that 10 acres of land, I would be able to do it.
You want 2 units on the 10 acres?
Yes. And I don't want to put any in conservation. I don't want to give it up.
Under the 10 acre, you'd already be, you're not subject to that because you're under 10 acres, we're not putting the RP10 on you.
But he
Right.
said, what if he had 10 acres and he was RP10, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
That's
I'm go-
correct, because
yeah.
for a second single-family unit, you need 20 acres. Now, there's one other thing. We have exempt subdivisions. That'll get you down to 5 acres, but you have to meet the exempt subdivision requirements just like you do today. That's limited to 4 units. That has to have access to a road that already exists. It can't be a road you're going to make to be able to subdivide your property.
Now, when we talk about in Chelsea area, we want conservation. We all know the roads. We know what we're trying to do here, what we want.
Yes.
But I want to see, looking at it, what area are we saying we want to set aside? Because we know, as I've just stated, whoever owns property in this overlay are going to lose the right to use that property. They're going to lose some. Absolutely. We just discussed it. Because right now, if I had 10 acres of land, as it sits today, how many houses could I build on my property?
If you had 10 acres as it sits
As it
today,
sits today.
it should be zone residential. If you're 10 acres, you should be zone residential.
And so how many units?
It's a half acre per, in residential, it's 1 unit per half acre.
Right.
But you still could only do an exempt or a minor subdivision without going through a major subdivision to the planning commission, hiring an engineer. So you're still limited to what you can do without going through
There
those
are
things.
some limitations, but under RP10 that would severely limitate those areas. Now, my say is, the focus is on the U-Haul district, right? And that's what this is about. But for the people in the audience or on the television that's watching, they're not sure exactly what we're talking about, how big of an area. So this overlayment, about what percentage does Jasper County get covered by this overlayment? Because are we focusing right on over there by Tigton Hall area, or are we a lot bigger?
So I can't give you the total
I'm just
acreage or
looking at
anything,
it.
but I'll tell you where
Yeah.
it is. It's Highway 170.
About a third of Jasper County sound fair?
I don't even think it's a third, no. I don't even think it's a quarter, to be honest with you. Maybe 1/5. We're talking basically everything west of I-95 from Coosawhatchee to where 462 and 170 meet near the Beaufort Jasper Academy for Career Excellence. So that's the area we're talking about.
Yeah. A lot of good and it's being put into this. But the devil is always in the details. And I don't even know all of them because I haven't got a chance to see the read thing. And I know it was on the website, but this was handed to me.
That's the same thing went out in your package there the other day.
Okay. And
Is that for the cover
could be a very, very fair thing. But anyway, come on, not hog up all the time and let someone
And
else
I want
have
y'all to
some.
have that. I'm not asking you for any action tonight. It's just really to go through this and talk about it. Let's show you the changes. We've made these changes to address many of the comments we've gotten.
Mr. Al?
I do have a couple of things. When we voted for the first reading back in July of 20, And we've kind of, since then, we've had numerous folks for and against this come to us. We're trying to, and it's a good thing we haven't proceeded with that, because we've had a lot of folks, and that would kind of fall into that 18-month period if we were to proceed with it. But what are our alternatives besides RP10? What are some other things that we can look at? We've never been given, to my knowledge, with my limited dealings with it, that any other alternatives to RP10, because here's my fear. This is very reminiscent of 2004 or 5-ish, when certain things went into play like this, and the municipalities annexed copious amounts of land. I don't want what we do to be in vain, and this either gets annexed or becomes a PDD with certain things in there for there. So what are some of the other alternatives that we can have?
I don't know that I can give you a concise answer except to go back to the philosophy that we started out with, which was we don't have good infrastructure there.
I agree 100% with you.
So to protect the infrastructure that we have there now from being overburdened, yet allow some development, we tossed around the ideas of trying to allow smaller impact subdivisions. And we looked around the area to see what's a smaller impact subdivision, and we kind of came up with a ballpark figure of probably 40 to 50 homes. That's a moderate sized subdivision. It allows for some humidity to be developed there, but it's only 500 trips per day according to the ITE manual and what you have into that. And the infrastructure can handle that for the next few years. If we can't handle a 2,000 unit development. We see what happens there. So we started with that premise of let's look at how we allow smaller subdivisions to occur throughout this district that are going to be on septic, they're going to be on well, and they're going to have to use the existing roads with some minor improvements along the roads for turn lanes and things like that. That's what we tried to visualize as we came forward. Did we do it perfectly? Absolutely not. We did the best we could, and that's why we keep coming back for work sessions asking, what do you see that you would like to see different in this that hopefully accomplishes those same goals of allowing for smaller impact subdivisions, or if you're going to do larger impact, you hold the developer's feet to the fire to get everything that you need for the development infrastructure that you need, including the environmental portions of it and the traffic infrastructure.
But David, the small guy doesn't have an opportunity for a PDD, and the big developer, he does, and so he's technically, and I know you'll argue it, but he's technically kind of exempt from all this. But the little guy, he's not. And I know we've talked about exemptions, but you already said he's got to have the land for 30 years in the family. Well, that doesn't cover everybody. And I know there was an exemption that was put in, but I know in other places where RP10 went in, those exemptions were removed.
Well, let me start with the question right there.
Okay.
Let's talk about what is the small guy. Is it the 50-acre guy? Is it the 250-acre guy? Is it the 10-acre guy? Because we took out and we started looking at, we're talking about the guy that had 100, 200 acres, which isn't unusual in a rural area with timberland out there to have that. What is reasonable to look at what they might want to do to preserve their land rights to the extent that we can with the infrastructure that we have. So if we have some parameters, we'll start working with it.
Right, well, the big subdivisions, I don't think we can stand them anymore. I mean, we're being inundated and everybody knows it. And we can simply try to work around that and keep that, because one 2,000 unit home is going to have far greater impact than everybody's individual that is fixing to lose rights, as I've stated before, to that property. Ending the big things we can do, but not with these PDDs and all that. And I would love to see something, as Joey was saying, are there any alternatives? Because there's so much in here that are going to drive the price up for the small person that wants to build a house in Jasper County. He's got to find, you're going to tell me no, but there's going to be cost associated that's going to drive the price up for housing for low-income people that fall under this underlayment. Is that a fair statement or not?
Well, I'll just tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, and what you do see is you think it's a small family guy, but really once he gets ready to sell it and the developer makes him a nice enough offer, It's no more for a family guy.
Can I bring that up? I'm glad you brought that
I
up.
don't know, how do you differentiate in your ordinance?
I do have a question, and I'm sorry. Can I just do
Yeah, go ahead.
one question? We're coming. What happens if we did nothing? Now,
Well,
wait,
we
if
have,
we did,
I
wait,
can tell you.
I want to tell you, if we did nothing, you've got
Mm-hmm.
1,000 acres in preservation, right? How many houses can you put on that preservation?
In rural preservation,
We're doing this, this is
one
the
per
way.
acre,
This is
one
my-
per acre.
This is my thing is, we're doing this to stop people from doing what they want to
The
do.
developer, they're gonna love to come in under the one per
Yeah, but then
acre.
if the developer comes in, we control it anyway, right? We can say
If-
anything we
if
want.
they- if
Here's
they get
the
a
thing, I think we all collectively agree, we don't want to see urban development in a rural area. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. We don't have the roads and water to support it.
No, we don't.
But if we hold the people's feet to the fire and we don't let them, if we make them do what they're supposed to be doing, that's where we, as the elected officials, we should be doing, to make sure that they follow those standards and not let politics get in the way of allowing urban development in a place that can't support it.
Our problem that we have, which is an issue, it's not really a problem, it's the thing you have to deal with. The more people you put in an area, the more impact you're going to have. You spread it out a little bit more, it has lesser impact because you have more absorption. As we used to say, dilution is the solution, with water stuff, but you move things out. One of our premises in looking at, because this is all going to be on septic for a long, long time, is what is the best management practice for a lot size for a septic system currently. Everyone's going to at least an acre because of the failure of the systems and having to have multiple replacement areas there. So if we start out that you really ought to have an acre to begin with, that becomes a base zoning unit to work with. Then you try and figure out how many can you put in an area based upon the fact that we have very poor soils in that area of the county. When we look at the geological stuff, that's why we started looking at the groundwater. So we're looking at septic as being a controlling, limiting factor on a lot of it. The other one is, we all know, well, we don't know, many of us know what Argent Boulevard looked like 20 years ago. Right? We now know what it looks like now. And 462 could be the next Argent Boulevard just by incremental growth out there. We have so many people that are driving down from Hampton, Allendale to work on Bluffton, Hilton Head, Hardyville now. We have to look at what is the impact of residential out there, what's the size of the subdivision along the way, the separation. That's what we're trying to do as planners. And we're not doing it perfectly, that's what we're asking y'all for is guidance.
But in saying that, the reason Argent Boulevard the way it was is the developers back then and the planning commissions and all that, they allowed that. Whereas a PDD, if I'm not mistaken, you could do RP10 there, really, in a PDD and say you're only allowed 1 per 10 acres. Am I correct on that? And if they're over, all we're trying to say, and I think this is, I'm going to surmise this if I'm talking wrong, is we're not worried about the big guy. We are worried about the big guy. We're also worried about the small guy. For example, when you have this 50% and all that, the first thing that came out of my mouth or out of my brain was, who's going to do this? Is a developer, not anybody else.
But
Right.
we crafted that word a developer can't. That's not applicable to him. And neither is the family
Because
estate.
they have to have
So
the
those
family
were
owned
just
property to
for
get there.
families.
That's why we try to put a delimiter in there. Not that we're trying to discourage somebody from making money off their land that they've invested in, but to discourage outside people from coming in here and buying their way forward and putting in something that we really should. The by right zoning is the thing that you have to worry about. The PDD, you can do anything that you can get them to accept. But with the by right zoning, you have to have some limitations on it to avoid, as I think you started out, Mr. Kemp, 1,000 acres with 1,000 homes, because that's the base zoning density under the R.
But at 1,000 acres, we would have a PDD and say it could be
No,
Only-
if it's already zoned, they come in with a plan that.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say, is what we're trying to prevent is not the land as much as the people coming in and trying to rezone. So if a developer comes in here and says, I'm buying that land, right? He's speculating. It's pure speculation. We do not have to change that zone. Am I correct?
So, Mr. Kemp, you did ask what happens if we don't change anything. So thinking about it like that, we don't change it, it remains RP, and it's not being developed by a developer. But now a family comes in and they want to put 5 houses on there. Well, according to what's on the books today, without doing anything, the second unit is a conditional use. They don't get the third, fourth, and fifth unit. So we were making provisions for that in here. But today, that's not written in the code. They would have to either be able to subdivide the land under a minor subdivision or an exempt subdivision or a major
And
subdivision.
believe me, this is not an easy thing for us. I have no idea. I'm learning it. In fact, part of the problem I had was it kept on changing, and I kept on trying to say, okay, what's the change going to happen? What's going to happen? I'm not afraid of what I know. I'm afraid of what I don't know.
Mr. Kemp, may I just follow your logic there for a second? You were assuming, I think, in that what you said, that a PDD would logically be an upzoning. And I think what they're trying to say is, by right, that may not necessarily be the case.
Not by right, it's not, no.
Yeah, but by right it is RP, right? This not RP. It's a preservation, right?
Right.
So that has its particular.
So the large lot owner that just wants to subdivide for their family, they have to meet what's on the books today. They can only have a second unit as a conditional use.
On 1,000 acres.
Yes, that's right.
Unless they do an exempt subdivision, they want to carve out 5
Or
acres
a
of some
minor
existing road,
subdivision.
or a minor subdivision, which is up to 4. So we've built in staged, we've had staged development along the way.
So what if they're short on cash and want to sell 5 acres to pay their taxes?
That was an argument that we worked through. You had a fix for that, didn't you?
Well, if they can meet the exempt
If
subdivision.
they've got an access road that's
You can
already
do
there,
or
they
a
come in,
minor-
we stamp the
well,
plant, and they
not if
move
it's
on.
already done.
that's as simple as we can make it for the, on the 5 acre or more.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can, just one other point I had, you all seem to be on the same page as far as large-scale development, and you didn't think that was appropriate for that area. So is it possible that they could disallow PDDs in that area altogether?
It's a possibility if that's.
I can tell you,
Well, I don't mind about the PDD. The PDD puts us on control more than anything else. It's the purchase of the land that's the really big problem. Because, again, it's a speculation. When I went to Charleston, the people up there said, the problem is up there was they didn't consider, they said that when they bought the land, they had to change the zone. They had to change the zone. Rather than recognize that these were speculators coming in saying they had the possibility of changing. That's where it changes.
Part of it is the resolve of the council that sits there every time, because the council has to approve a PDD. A good council, and I use that word in conservation planning sense, a good council would require X, Y, Z, A, B, C, all these things out there. A council that didn't pay attention to stuff might let some things through the crack that they shouldn't have. So it's discretion into there. Again, it's all about the legislative process and the council telling us what they want to do and then following through it, which is again back to look at this thing, whatever we pass, look at it in short order to see how many complaints there are, how many hardships we may have created, because we don't want to create hardships. We want to create opportunities for our local people, who are blessed with land, to be able to do something with it and yet not destroy what we all love about Jasper County.
I understand. I'm not, all I'm trying to say is an understanding, really, at least to me. I don't know about the other three.
Well, Mr.
To
Kim,
me,
I
it's
appreciate that.
understanding.
I thought you had some good discussion this
Yeah.
afternoon. Another thing, as far as large-scale growth that you were talking about, we all know this is only as good as the political will, and that's not just yours, that's the other jurisdictions as well. And what you really need is you need municipalities to also simultaneously adopt growth boundaries and stick to them. And that would make it perfect for everybody. I know that's a hard thing to do, but that is what is needed. And so, is there anything that you can think of now that you would like us to look at or to adjust, or concerns? I'll make some notes that we can bring back to you.
What are some other alternatives that we could look at as well?
I just need to go through it from the back.
You're a different person, I know.
Can I suggest that y'all provide, if you have something, write it down and send it to us. We have a large group of folks that will back us up. Mr. Kemper's met some of them. Charleston County is great. People up in Spartanburg and Greenville are great. They have lived the problem. They've tried to deal with it. They've adjusted how they've dealt with it. So I think they showed Mr. Kemp many of the issues that they thought they were addressing that weren't addressed, that we've tried to avoid here. And we'll bring something back to you to say, here's some alternatives to the way that we thought about doing it. What do you think about these?
Well, maybe invite Charleston down here, because he had said he'd come down.
Yeah, and if you remember the conservation subdivision guidelines they were telling us, don't do that, don't do that. They struggled with it, and developers, they always find a creative way to get around it all. But theirs wasn't just for family, so they have amended their ordinance not to allow conservation subdivision, but what we did was change ours to say this is for families. It's not for the developer.
Yeah. Well, I think you have hit us on the nail. We're concerned about this large-scale development, and we have a lot of concern for the individual person. And I think, from talking to you in the past, you're trying to target what's being used against you in our existing laws. They're allowing things to happen like building 10 homes to sell them without proper road, without proper infrastructure. And so we've got to kind of get together and tell you what our concerns are and try to get, because I know what's your problem. We've already voted on something that helped you with some of that. And that went kind of towards helping with the RP10 stuff. Certainly saved people a lot of trouble with who's going to take care of that road that was built by a developer that doesn't belong to the county. And now they're stuck. Stuff like that. I'm keen on that. And I'm very keen on not letting these huge developments come in, because until our infrastructure can catch up, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we're kind of a little beyond where we need to be right now already. And I want to make it clear, I know that, and that I want to stop. I do not want to tell somebody who owns a piece of land that, but at the same time, maybe in these areas, we don't want them to be able to do, as you said, sell it off. And, but then when you say, hey, you got to have that land for 30 years to get the family exemption, that's problematic, because not all family land has been in the family for 30 years. It's an important key for a lot of things, but we've got to balance who's getting hurt and who's getting the benefit of all the things that are espoused under this. And people are going to be hurt, and we're looking at that. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how much it's going to cost an individual more money. I hate how we spend so much money. We look for ways to have affordable housing. We throw money here, we throw money there. But then at the core of it, we're going to do something that's going to make it impossible. And you say, well, if you have 1 acre of land, you're good. But what about the inventory of that? Because when those are gone, there's no more. It's not going to be an opportunity for the young folks who want to build a house. They're going to go somewhere, I know. But the price of housing has exploded in the last 3 to 5 years. And all this is going to exacerbate it. And so when somebody asks me, what are you going to do about affordable housing? I say some little bit of deregulation. I don't like deregulation. But I'm scared of something that's just going to pile on so much that nobody in this room, I don't think, knows exactly how much cost is going to impact future young folks, let's say that, or people without a whole lot of money. Because if you didn't know, sewage now is through the roof. To get sewage, by the time you pay the engineers, all the impact fees, and all that, 10 years ago I would have bought a house for it. And 10 years ago I paid less.
Yeah, and the area we're looking at, not gonna have sewage anytime soon, and that's what
Right.
Mr. Tatter said earlier, and that's what we know. I
But
mean,
when you
this
have
lack of
1,000-foot
infrastructure.
setbacks in the beginning, you cut back on it because you heard some things, and you cut back from 1,000 foot. The average acre, the width, 1,000 foot, you're automatically kind of going into that conservation. You're saying you can't build but 1,000 foot. Now we've brought it back, so we're gonna look at all that. But at one time, you had some that were even more than setbacks for a septic tank, right? And so if you own 1 acre of land, you couldn't have fit a septic tank on it. So by default, you have said you can't do anything there. And that,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Arzillo made some great points, and it has been a work in progress, as you know. I was going to offer also, Mr. Tedder asked if you had questions, send them our way, but it's also helpful because you're speaking with your constituents. If you have what-if scenarios that you want to pose to us too, that's helpful too. That tests the system and allows us to figure out if there is a flaw in it too. So if you have a friend that has some property and wants to do X, Y, and Z, ask us if they can do it, ask what the options are, and we would be happy to run it through the gauntlet.
I think every time we meet, we get a little bit closer.
Yes.
We get a little bit more. I mean, discussion is good. It may be impatient for some people because it seems so obvious, but it isn't. Because go back to 2008 or 2005, would we have done the same thing on Argent Boulevard? Would Argent Boulevard been RP10? Right? We know what happens when RP10, we don't address it right up front. We have a chance to do that. But how do we do it right? So we're not saying 20 years from now, people sitting on this dais are going to say, what the hell are they, excuse me, what were they doing? You know? And that's what we're saying now down in Argent Boulevard. Why did they ever do this?
Right, and my sense is it's always an evolution, and you have to have a certain amount of pain or awareness of the problem before you address the problem, unfortunately. And that's where we are with the traffic right now. And I think that's a good spot. And it's hard, I know, as policymakers to look 10, 15 years hence, but it's going to be it's going to be an interesting environment, and you guys are in a very powerful position to affect that.
We have a public comment, right? Public hearing next, the 5th.
Yes, sir. Yes,
May
that's
5th,
coming up.
yes.
May 5th.
So we'll go from there, and we'll talk to you and all that, and it's a work in progress. I think that's the best way to look at it.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Yes.
Mr. Arzillo, yeah. Forward. The second part of the workshop, we can do that real quick?
Yes, sir. Just to give you a quick heads up, and thank you for putting this on here. We know sometimes this draws some attention, but you have a resolution on your regular session agenda, and that involves a private borrowing. It is not public borrowing for proposed improvements for Coastal Carolina Medical Center, which is now owned by Novant Health. It's part of a larger bond issuance, and that bond issuance has some certain requirements in order for the bonds to remain federally tax exempt. And those requirements for this particular financing requires that you hold a public hearing and that you adopt a resolution that approves the project so that they can get the financing. It's a very large number, as you saw, but that involves facilities in South Carolina and North Carolina. And so we do have a representative from the property owner who will be here that can speak later at your regular session, but that's the sum and summary of it. If you had any questions now, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Inkees? No. Mr. Arzillo? This is nothing more than saying, yes, it's okay. This has nothing to do with us. We have no
That's right.
skin in the game.
You acknowledge what's going on, you're supportive of their improvements, yes.
So if they all go bankrupt, we don't own them.
That's right, you have no fiduciary
Okay.
responsibility associated with it.
Just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you very much. I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the workshop.
Make a motion to adjourn the workshop and take a quick recess before we start the regular meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye and raise their hand.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass. We'll have a 10-minute break.